Good evening. Here's what's coming up on The World Today. Temporary ceasefire between Israel and Hamas enters its fifth day as Germany calls it a ray of hope. All 44 construction workers trapped in Indian tunnel for more than 2 weeks rescued. Plus, North Korea's spy satellite launch dominates discussions at the United Nations Security Council meeting. Welcome to the program. I'm Millicent Walker in Lagos. The temporary ceasefire between Israel and Hamas has entered its fifth day, giving hope for more hostages to be released and more aid distribution in Gaza. German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock called the current ceasefire between the warring parties a ray of hope. The foreign minister was speaking at a foreign policy event in Berlin, where she said Germany must act as a bridge builder between Israel and Arab countries. And for Palestinians and Israelis, they expressed relief regarding the truce extension, saying it is the right decision for now. Meanwhile, the White House has welcomed the 2 days extension of the humanitarian pause in Gaza. Speaking to reporters at a news briefing, White House National Security spokesman John Kirby says he hopes Americans will be among the 20 hostages to be released next, as 8 to 9 U.S. citizens are believed to still be among those being held.
The humanitarian pause in Gaza, now in its fourth day, will be extended for another 2 days through Thursday morning Israel time. This humanitarian pause has already brought a halt to the fighting, together with a surge of humanitarian assistance. Now, in order to extend the pause, Hamas has committed to releasing another 20 women and children over the next 2 days. We would, of course, hope to see the pause extended further, and that will depend upon Hamas continuing to release hostages. Well, we certainly hope so. I mean, we're going to watch this very, very closely. We're certainly hoping that another batch of hostages gets released today as part of the fourth and final day of the original agreement. We're going to be watching closely to see if any Americans are in that group. But as it has come out over the last 3 days, we don't really know until you get into the end game who's going to be actually on that list. And then even then, you got to watch closely to seeing if who's on the list is the folks that actually come out. So we're watching and hoping. It's a real risk. You have to expect a group like Hamas, a terrorist group, which clearly doesn't abide by laws of war, will try to take advantage of any pause in the fighting for their own benefit. So we're watching that closely, as well as our Israeli counterparts. You can bet that they're watching that closely. And I don't want to speak for the Israelis, but I mean, this is a calculated risk that Prime Minister Netanyahu and his war cabinet are willing to take in order to get those hostages out. So it's a balance. And as you've also heard the Israelis say, that once the pauses are over, they intend to go right back at military operations.
Well, let's hear from Qatar, who's one of the mediators of the agreed truce alongside Egypt, the US and the European Union and Spain. While effort is underway to push for even more extension beyond the additional 2 days agreement, Qatari Foreign Ministry spokesperson Majid Al-Ansari says the main focus right now is to reach a sustainable truce that would end the war.
The estimate of the number of hostages, we have heard a lot of estimates from other sources, including Hamas on one side, Israel on the other side, but we cannot guarantee at the moment. We cannot validate any of these numbers. What we can validate, or at least say with a degree of certainty, is that we have an extra number of 20 hostages that are ready to be released within this 48 hours. I cannot testify to any other number at this moment. However, the 4 days were used to increase the number of hostages that are identified by Hamas, and therefore we reached this number of 20. We are hopeful that in the next 48 hours we'll be getting more information from Hamas regarding the rest of the hostages. Regarding what we will be working on in the next 48 hours. So, of course, Andrew, our main focus right now is, and our hope is, to reach a sustainable truce that would lead to further negotiations and eventually to an end to this iteration of violence, to this war. And we have always said that we need the push of the whole international community to make sure that that happens. However, we are working with what we have. And what we have right now is a provision to the agreement that allows us to extend days as long as Hamas is able to guarantee the release of at least 10 hostages or from their side. And therefore, this is what we have at the moment.
Well, more reactions now. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Gutteres has described the extended truce as a glimpse of hope and humanity, but warned it was not enough time to meet the aid needs of the Gaza Strip. The UN has been delivering some humanitarian aid to Gaza via the Rafah border crossing from Egypt, but also wants to be able to use the Karem Shalom border crossing controlled by Israel. Earlier on Monday, spokesman for the Secretary General, Stefan Dujarric, did say negotiations must continue with the aim of turning the temporary truce in Gaza into a full humanitarian ceasefire.
Amount of time, I would say it's a glimpse of hope and humanity in the middle of the darkness of war. And I strongly hope that this will enable us to increase even more the humanitarian aid to the people in Gaza that is suffering so much, knowing that even with that additional amount of time, it will be impossible to satisfy all the dramatic needs of the population in Gaza. I am sincerely hopeful that it will be possible to have other crossings because they will facilitate the distribution, and that will also facilitate the control by the Israeli side. So I'm very hopeful that this will happen.
And for a relative of the Calderon family, she said this was a momentous day in their lives, saying they were filled with excitement but had not yet fully processed what happened as teenage relatives arrived safely in Tel Aviv, a hospital in the early hours of today. 16-year-old Sahir, 12-year-old Erez were among 11 hostages who were released late on Monday.
Hi, I'm Utto with the Calderon family. Our sweet 16-year-old Sahar and our wonderful 12-year-old Erez have returned to us safely. We just heard that they're coming upstairs and they are going directly to be examined by the doctors. This is a momentous day in our lives. We're filled with excitement, but we have not yet fully processed what has happened. I'm finding that it's difficult to go from a state of endless anxiety about their fate to a state of relief and joy. I believe it will take time. This is an exciting and heart-filling moment, but we also understand that it is the beginning of a difficult rehabilitation process for Sahar and Erez, who are still young and have been through an unbearable experience. More than anything, we pray for the safe and speedy return of our beloved Ofer Calderon, Sahar and Erez's father, who is still in danger, and of course, the speedy return of all the kidnapped and missing as a top national priority. We would like to thank the people of Israel for the mutual guarantee, unity, care, and endless embrace we receive every day. It is very helpful and strengthens us very much. We want to thank the headquarters of the kidnapped people and the countless and wonderful volunteers who work day and night to support and help in the release of our loved ones. To the countless people and experts who have come forward to help us with the wisdom, experience, and humanity. We thank the War Cabinet, the security services, and the government that worked to bring about this moment.
And a doctor from Israel's health ministry said 11 recently freed hostages from Gaza are in stable medical condition in a Tel Aviv hospital. The health officer says the 9 children and 2 women were spending time with their families in a quiet environment ahead of further necessary medical evaluations. So far, a total of 69 Israeli foreign hostages has been freed by the Islamist Palestinian group Hamas under the original 4-day truce.
Tonight, a group of hostages was released from Gaza and arrived in Israel. The group is made up of 9 Israeli children, 2 Israeli women, after 52 days in captivity in Gaza. The Ichilov hospital was prepared and ready to receive them. In the hospital, the freed hostages met their families for the first time and will receive medical and psychological care as needed. We wish to remind you that these are sensitive moments for the freed hostages and their families, and we wish to preserve their privacy. The Ministry of Health expresses joy in the return of these freed hostages and wishes for the speedy return of all the other hostages.
We can say at this point that all our children and mothers are in a stable medical condition, and we will further on continue with medical evaluation. Right now, they are spending time with their families in a quiet environment, and we want them to be with their families in order to provide a quiet environment and a supportive system in order to ease their come to Israel.
Well, let's bring in now security expert David Utto. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Hi, David. Thanks for joining us. Just to get your thoughts, were you surprised by the 2-day extra, the extension of the truce agreement between Israel and Hamas?
Well, I think, I wasn't surprised. We're talking about day 52 since the October 7 event. And I looking at the current situation between Israel and Hamas, this was required. They do require, for example, Hamas would need more time to re-strategize, maybe treat its wounded. But also, the truce provides Hamas an opportunity to release more of the Palestinian prisoners being held in Israel. So it's a plus for the psychology of the Hamas militants. But also from an Israeli point of view, they had two missions. One was to release the hostages and to eliminate or annihilate Hamas, as the Israeli Prime Minister put it. So a further opportunity to release more Israeli hostages, is in line with one of the missions that the Israeli Prime Minister had set. So if they have more, maybe 2 or 4 more days, 48 hours or how maybe that could be extended to 4 more days, then it's an opportunity for both sides to somehow realize their mission objective. But again, it's never clear, what would happen next. But it's a good truce, and it benefits both sides, but also benefits the hostages who have been released. Because if you're one of them, this is the kind of opportunity that you want.
And Qatar is pushing for even more extension, but has said that it would depend on Hamas if it's willing to release more hostages. The UN Secretary General had said that, well, even though the truce is welcomed, it's not meeting all of the objectives. For example, the provision, the humanitarian side to what Gaza is going through at the moment.
Well, I think, Hamas would want to weigh in terms of the number of hostages that they are willing to release. I wouldn't think that, they would release half of the numbers. I mean, the Israeli government had estimated previously that Hamas had, 200 plus. I think the numbers were 241. I'm not sure that Hamas would want to release half of those numbers at this point in time because, of course, the hostages for Hamas, it's some kind of a guarantee from a military perspective that the Israelis' defense forces will be very careful in terms of how they carry out incursions into Gaza Strip. But from an Israeli point of view, this is something which would give them more leverage, from a political, side. I mean, the Israeli government and the executive would want to see as many hostages released as possible. Now, from a military point of view, it gives them an opportunity to carry out their incursions into Gaza Strip, knowing fully well that most of these hostages have been released. But also, I think the Israeli intelligence will be monitoring very carefully where these hostages are coming from. They'll be using information that these hostages would give in terms of trying to locate themselves where perhaps they can find these hostages. They would want to limit these truces because, of course, it gives Hamas an opportunity to recalibrate, from a strategic point of view, an operational point of view, and, find many ways of defending, their territory and, inflicting as many casualties as they could on the Israeli forces that, have invaded the Gaza Strip. So it's a matter of watching, but, humanitarian-wise, I think this is a good thing. Although most of the humanitarian activities have been the Israelis are trying to fight that back because they know that the more humanitarian aid that Hamas gets, there's a possibility that it would, entitle Hamas to dig into its heels, to be able to convince the population that, they could get those aid, and that would assist Hamas to, further defend, the Gaza Strip. So it's a win-win for both sides. But we're very happy that countries like Qatar, with the aid of Egypt and the United States, have moved a step forward. What we want to see is some kind of a lasting solution leading to negotiations for the end of this conflict.
And I was going to ask, do you think there's a system to what nationality is released? And this is from those being held by Hamas now. We heard from John Kirby saying he hopes that Americans will be among the next 20 to be released. Is there a system, do you think, to the nationality of those who are being released by Hamas?
Well, I think Hamas, has been very tight-lipped in terms of releasing information on the identity of the hostages being held. But we know that, some of these hostages, most of them, if not all, have Israeli citizenship, and they do have also a dual national, so they're dual nationals. So it's not like full Americans, they're all Israeli nationals with other identities or other nationalities. So we don't know specifically the countries that are represented, but I understand that there was an African, a Tanzanian, who was one of the hostages. I also understand that he may have been killed as a result of the Palestinians blamed the Israeli incursions or the missiles, for killing some of the hostages. I also know that there was a South African, and of course we know that the Americans are saying there were a couple of Americans there. But the bottom line is that these are Israeli citizens and dual nationals. And that's why they're being held by the Palestinians or Hamas, as the case may be.
So far, we understand that the mediators, Qatar, alongside Egypt, the US, European Union, are trying to push for even more extension beyond this additional 2 days. Do you see this happening, and do you think that that is the solution that we need now, or an even more permanent solution for an end to the war?
I think what we're experiencing now is what has been described as a pause. We haven't gotten to the point of a ceasefire, which is a key element in terms of indicating a route towards negotiations for an end in sight. The answer to the conflict, whichever way you look at it, is that you need a two-state solution. But of course, both sides believe that they can. For example, the Israelis believe that they can annihilate Hamas, which from military point of view and from a psychological point of view, I don't think that's going to be possible at this point in time. But of course, the Israelis have to say that to their citizens, in the backdrop of the failures of October 7th. For Hamas, Hamas is playing a defensive role at this point in time. And, they seem to be fighting for the Palestinian cause. I don't think Hamas is going to give up. But this particular truce which has been extended gives room. It's an indication that talks can take place, both sides can agree on something small, and therefore there's a possibility that they can also agree on something big, which could be a ceasefire. So that's where I think we're hoping to move towards a permanent solution. But as you and I know, the Israeli-Palestinian crisis has been going on since 1948, when the State of Israel was created. So I doubt that, and I don't see any indications, from either Hamas or the Palestinian authorities or Israel's supporters like the United States. I don't see any indications that, we would get to a point where we can see a permanent solution. Not for now. Perhaps that would be a discussion for another day.
All right. Yes, indeed. Security expert David Utto, thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
Still to come on the program. Britain's Sunak cancels meeting with Greek Prime Minister in Wa over Parthenon sculptures. We have details in a moment. Well, still staying with the Israel-Hamas war, a British Palestinian surgeon who was forced to flee the last fully functioning hospital in Gaza City recounted some of what he had seen at a news conference in London. Surgeon Ghassan Abu Sitta said he had witnessed horrific scenes and that for medical staff who stayed in Gaza, every wave of wounded person being rushed into Al-Shifa Hospital risked turning into a personal tragedy. He adds that up to 45% of the wounded at Al-Shifa Hospital were children.
One of the most horrific scenes that I witnessed in Shifa Hospital was when, after the air raid and the dead and the wounded were brought in, members of the Shifa medical staff and nursing staff would be running frantically in the emergency department, looking at the faces of the wounded and the dead to see whether their relatives had been amongst the wounded, and in many cases their children had been amongst the dead and the wounded. During my time at Shifa Hospital, it became apparent that 40 to 45% of all the wounded were going to be children. That there were the primary target of the bombing was people's residential homes.
Before the truce extension, the United Nations Relief Agency, UNRWA, was said it's seeking to deliver aid into northern Gaza. Trucks carrying aid and ambulances were seen lined up and moving, which, according to the Director of Affairs, Thomas White, are aimed to be delivered to people in the north of the Strip.
I'm with one of the convoys that we are taking north into Gaza City this morning to help people who've been living under appalling conditions in the north of Gaza. Obviously, the last few days have really given many people in Gaza the opportunity to get out safely from their homes and look for basic things like water and food. So in the south, UNRWA has been very busy. We've got a big flour distribution program underway, and we're also looking after over 500,000 people living in our schools. But this morning we really want to get north. We're waiting for clearance to go through the Israeli controlled zone north of Wadi Gaza so that we can get into Gaza City and up to Jabalia to provide assistance to people who've been living in the most desperate and dangerous conditions up in the north of Gaza. So the last few days have really given us an opportunity to get to some of the communities in the north, but it's really not enough. What we need is a long-term ceasefire so that we can serve people across Gaza in the north and in the south. That means that we need to get more aid coming through the Rafah crossing. It also means that we can get unrestricted access to the north of Gaza to provide support to many people who've been living in very, very difficult and dangerous conditions. The ceasefire has provided a very welcome respite from this conflict. Too many people have lost their lives, too many people have lost their houses, so we welcome this ceasefire. We hope that this ceasefire is extended, but in fact, as humanitarians and for the community here in Gaza, we need a complete ceasefire so this fighting stops.
For Egypt's Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry, he said it was time to enforce the two-state solution in order to end the conflict between Israel and Palestinians. Mr. Shoukry's statement echoed Arab states and European Union agreement at a meeting in Spain on Monday that the two-state solution, which envisages a state for the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip alongside Israel, was the best policy to end the conflict. The Egyptian foreign minister was speaking on the sidelines of the Union for the Mediterranean Summit in Barcelona, a 43-member grouping of European, North African and Middle Eastern countries. However, Israel did not attend the summit.
The two-state solution is still the consensus of the international community, but at this stage it is not a matter of a process to manage the conflict and not reach a conclusion and the establishment of the Palestinian state is not acceptable. The international community has the ability, the mechanism, to enforce a two-state solution, to implement a two-state solution. The issues have been negotiated between the two parties over the span of 3 decades, and we cannot rely any longer on the reoccurrence of conflict by virtue of policies that do not support peace but support increasing violence and polarization. We believe it is time to implement the two-state solution. It is time to create the Palestinian state so that we can finally have a conclusion to this conflict. We oppose the displacement, any form of displacement inside the Palestinian territories or any efforts to displace the Palestinian people outside of their homeland. This is an effort, if it is materialized, to liquidate the Palestinian cause and to free the Palestinian lands of their inhabitants, which represents a violation of international humanitarian law, but even a war crime.
We head to the White House, which has said the U.S. President Joe Biden was horrified by the shooting in Vermont of 3 Palestinian-American college students over the weekend. White House spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre said it's absolutely no place for violence or hate in America. The 48-year-old suspect in the shooting of 3 college students of Palestinian descent in Vermont pleaded not guilty to 3 counts of attempted second-degree murder on Monday and was ordered by a judge to be held without bond. The suspect, Jason J. Eaton, appeared at an arraignment at the Chittenden County Criminal Court in Burlington via a remote video feed from the county jail where he has been held since his arrest on Sunday.
The President and the First Lady were horrified to learn about the 3 college students of Palestinian descent, 2 of whom are American citizens who were shot Saturday in Burlington, Vermont. The President continues to receive updates from his team about the ongoing investigation. These students were taking part in a uniquely American tradition, gathering with family and loved ones to celebrate Thanksgiving. They should be back in school with their classmates, not in a hospital room. The President, First Lady, and everyone here at the White House join Americans across the country in praying for their full recovery, and we send our deepest condolences to their families and the broader Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim American communities. While we are waiting for more facts, we know this: there is absolutely no place for violence or hate in America. No person should worry about being targeted while going about their daily lives.
And going back to the scene where it all started, the attack by Hamas militants October the 7th, is German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier and his Israeli counterpart Isaac Herzog, who visited Kibbutz Be'eri on Monday. Mr. Steinmeier's visit to the largely destroyed kibbutz took place on the second day of his 2-day trip to Israel at the invitation of President Herzog. The 2 presidents met with residents of the kibbutz and were shown the ruins of the houses, businesses which were destroyed during the attack. The German president announced that he would take the patronage for the rebuilding of the kibbutz art gallery together with President Herzog, adding that the German parliament will fund the rebuilding with 7 million euros.
Let me express my gratitude that we were invited by the president and his wife to Israel, and that we are moved that he brought us here to Be'eri. In Germany, you know, we were able to listen to the news from the 7th of October. We were watching the TV, we saw the pictures, and it was easy to imagine what has happened here. But to be here, right in this place, is different. You know, the ruins behind us, they are the silent witness of what had happened here. And it's not easy to find the words to describe what we heard from those who have the knowledge and those who were witnessing the deeds, the murders, the killings, the rapes of the Hamas here on the 7th of October. We are here in the kibbutz, and the kibbutz movement is in a certain way linked to Europe and especially to Germany. This kibbutz in Be'eri was founded by Jews from Germany, from Hungary, and from former Czechoslovakia. And so, therefore, the kibbutzim are part of the history, and they're, representing the soul of Israel. And being here means that we are able to witness how much this soul of Israel is touched and destroyed by the attack of Hamas to Israeli people and to the kibbutzim of Be'eri and the neighbor kibbutzim here close by. I think what we have to do is to think about the next months and next years when people are returning to the kibbutz of Be'eri, and I think they need a sort of anchor. And therefore, the President and I, we were deciding to take the patronage for the rebuilding of the art gallery and the convening house in which the people in peaceful times were gathering every day. I'm grateful with regard to the German Parliament, which has announced in the next year to give us 7 million euro for the rebuilding of of the art gallery and the convening center. And in addition to that, I hope that we create conditions that young people, craftsmen from Germany and from Israel, are meeting here to cooperate very closely in this rebuilding process. So
Away from the war in the Middle East to cheery news coming out of India, where all 41 construction workers trapped in a tunnel in India for more than 2 weeks have been rescued. Rescue team pulled the men out one by one via a 90-centimeter diameter pipe that was inserted through the rubble of the collapsed tunnel. 41 ambulances were lined up to take the men to a hospital about 30 kilometers away. Earlier, rescuers said they had broken through rocks and debris to reach the trapped men, and the process would take hours. People gathered to watch the process. Relatives have said they were happy and keen to see their loved ones again, and now they can. The men, low-wage workers from India's poorest state, have been stored there 17 days in the 4.5-kilometer tunnel in Uttarakhand state in northern India since it collapsed November the 12th, with access to food, water, light, oxygen, medicines through but a pipe. VOA's Anjana Pasricha joins us now from New Delhi. Hi, Anjana. First, it must be good news. How are people reacting to this cheery news that all 41 men trapped have now been rescued?
Oh, there was a huge celebratory mood outside after the men were brought in. The operation to extract the men began at 7:30 p.m., lasted about an hour and a half. The men were garlanded. The top officials of state were present to meet them, and locals offered prayers at a temple that had been built, a makeshift temple near the tunnel. So the good news was greeted literally by the whole country and by the communities close by, and of course their relatives.
And if we go back to the beginning, is this a regular incident in India, or this is something that's just happened now, after a very long time? Because many wonder how, this happened in the first place.
No, we have not had this type of an incident earlier. Now, officials have not attributed any reason for the collapse of the tunnel, but reports say it could have been triggered by a minor landslide in the Himalayan region. These mountains are very prone to these kind of landslides. In fact, environmentalists have long warned about large-scale construction that is presently taking place in the Himalayas, pointing out that this is a young, fragile mountain chain that can be easily destabilized by this widespread blasting of hillsides and cutting of trees.
Are there other plans by authorities, for example, to examine other tunnels in order to prevent this from reoccurring?
Absolutely. Questions have been raised about this tunnel collapse, and authorities have now ordered a safety audit of all tunnels being built for road projects in the country. India, is in the midst of a massive push to improve infrastructure. So we are seeing a huge expansion of roads, especially in the Himalayan mountains, because India needs to build border roads to China as well as tourist infrastructure. And this particular project was meant to connect Hindu pilgrimage sites. So this safety audit is very important, particularly because this tunnel did not have an exit passage, which should have been there in the first place and would have allowed the men to get out quickly when it collapsed.
Indeed. I'm sure for the 41 men, they would hope not to see a tunnel, not anytime soon. But then thanks so much, Anjana, VOA's Anjana Patricia, for that update.
Thank you.
Move on to other stories. North Korea has made a rare mention of dissenting votes in recent elections, although analysts dismissed it as an attempt to portray an image of a normal society rather than signaling any meaningful increase of rights in the authoritarian state. Reporting on the results of Sunday's election for deputies to regional people's assemblies, officials said 0.09% and 0.13% voted against the selected candidates for the provincial and city councils, respectively. The North's parliaments and regional councils serve as a rubber stamp to the ruling Workers' Party, with their elections usually registering over 99% voter turnout. And this month's election marks the first time North Korea has referred to dissenting votes in local polls since the 1960s. The reclusive North has one of the most highly controlled societies in the world, with the leader Kim Jong-un accused of using a system of patronage and repression to retain absolute power. Well, staying in North Korea, the leader Kim Jong-un has received photos taken by its recently launched spy satellite showing the White House, Pentagon and the U.S. aircraft carriers in the naval base of Norfolk. North Korea successfully launched its first reconnaissance satellite last week, which it said was designed to monitor U.S. and South Korean military movements. And for the past several years, the UN Security Council has been divided over how to deal with Pyongyang, as its nuclear provocations dominated talks at the United Nations Security Council meeting. Formerly known as the Democratic Republic, People's Republic of Korea, DPRK, North Korea has been under UN sanctions for its ballistic missile and also nuclear program since 2006. Russia and China, veto powers along with the US, Britain and France, have said more sanctions will not help and want such measures to be eased.
These launches represent a serious risk to international civil aviation and maritime traffic. While the DPRK issued the pre-launch notification to the Japanese Coast Guard, it did not issue airspace or maritime safety notifications to the International Maritime Organizations, the International Civil Aviation Organization, or the International Telecommunications Union. Mr. President, while sovereign states have the right to benefit from peaceful space activities, Security Council resolutions expressly prohibit the DPRK from conducting any launches using ballistic missile technology. On 21st of November, the Secretary General strongly condemned the launch of yet another military satellite using ballistic missile technology. It should be recalled that developing a military reconnaissance satellite was part of the plan, along with various other weapons systems, including so-called tactical nuclear weapons. As such, the DPRK has consistently demonstrated its strong intention to continue pursuing its nuclear weapons and ballistic missile programs in violation of relevant Security Council resolutions. We emphasize once again our call on the DPRK to refrain from such actions.
And Greek's Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis has accused his British counterpart Rishi Sunak of cancelling a scheduled meeting in London in a diplomatic row over the status of the Parthenon sculptures. Greece has repeatedly asked the British Museum to permanently return the 2,500-year-old sculpture that British diplomat Lord Elgin removed from the Parthenon temple in the early 19th century when he was ambassador to the Ottoman Empire. A statement by the Greek Prime Minister partly reads, "I expressed my annoyance that the British Prime Minister cancelled our planned meeting just hours before it was due to take place." Mark Harper, the British Transport Minister, said Mitsotakis was offered a meeting with Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dodon, but the offer wasn't taken up by the Greek government.
We offered a meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister, so it's a very senior level meeting. The Greek government chose not to take that up. They're entitled to take that view, and the Prime Minister set out clearly the government's position about the Elgin marble. So I think the position is very clear. It's a regret that the Greek Prime Minister wasn't able to take up the meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister, but that was offered, and obviously the Deputy Prime Minister would have been very happy to talk through a number of the important issues facing both of our countries today.
Still ahead on the programme. US First Lady Jill Biden unveils White House holiday decorations with the theme Magic, Wonder and Joy. We'll have that story in a bit. Please stay with us. We're in the African continent now, where the international NGO Save the Children says more than 136,000 people, including an estimated 74,000 children, are trapped in the historic northern Mali city of Timbuktu. The organization is also warning that the trapped are running out of essential items like food and medicine as armed groups block their entry to the city. Timbuktu is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and has been under siege by Al-Qaeda-linked jihadists since August. The jihadists have banned trucks from neighboring regions against entering Timbuktu, causing shortages, skyrocketing prices of food, fuel and other necessities. Police in Sierra Leone continue their manhunt for people involved in what the government has described as a planned and coordinated attack on the capital. Gunmen broke into an armory and several prisons in Freetown on Sunday, enabling the escape of almost 2,000 inmates. Installations outside the capital were also attacked. The authorities are offering a reward of $2,000 to anyone with information on a perpetrator still at large, as well as $1,000 for any leads on escaped prisoners. A nighttime curfew remains in place throughout Sierra Leone. 22 people died in the attacks, 13 of them servicemen loyal to the government. Well, 11 people have been killed in an incident at the platinum mine, and one of them in South Africa, according to the mining company Immigrants. The accident happened on Monday afternoon at Impala Rustenburg in the Northwest Province. The company's spokesperson, Johan Theron, says the incident involved a winding rope connected to a lift, which hoists people up and down the mine shaft. The lift started moving downwards unexpectedly. 86 people were affected, all of them dead. The mine rescue operation has concluded and investigations into the incident has commenced. Staying in South Africa, the Air Force SAF has hosted a special visit from Brazil's Embraer Defense and Security to demonstrate the capabilities of the C-390 military transport aircraft. It has the capability to perform air-to-air refueling, humanitarian aid capabilities, flying equipment, search and rescue, and aerial firefighting capabilities. In 2022, the Brazilian Armed Forces extended their support to the South African National Defense Force by providing valuable military assistance. And this assistance came in form of warfare training and logistical support. It is alleged that South Africa will spend $500 million to purchase the C-390 military transport aircraft.
In terms of transparency, I think what I will have to say, Lord, is that we want to be as open as possible. That's why now that we're starting with this project, we have to be open to South Africans and say, hey, look, we had been having this problem. And for us to have a solution, we need to start now thinking out of the box and come up with a solution that will address the challenges that we are facing. And it is in the interest of South Africans that we start now planning, because if you don't start planning now, going into the future, failure to plan is to plan to fail. That is the dictum that we always look at. So we started looking at this as a solution, and we will just go and test. That's why I'm saying we like playing with toys, and if need be, we break them and see if they are durable. If we try to break them and they break, then we say, no, this is not the right toy that we can play with. So yes, indeed, we take note of the observation that you said the minister made in Parliament. Indeed, there are challenges, but I want to be able to try and position or place the minister's assertion. It will be unfair. If she was here, that was going to be fair for us to engage and discuss on what she said in Parliament. So please, bear with me. I'm a soldier. I wouldn't like to try and play into the political space. Otherwise, I will burn my fingers. An issue of pricing. At this moment, pricing will come towards the tail end, because for now we want a capability, and when we have determined the capability, then we will see within the same category who is giving us a better price. And then, but that is done by those people that are qualified to do so, not us as soldiers. We will tell you, I want an aircraft that can carry this tonnage and go these miles so that I can be able to satisfy the needs of South Africans to bring peace and stability in the region.
Meanwhile, the spotlight this weekend was on the Archibald Immigrants Awards, where resilience and positive impact were celebrated. The event highlighted the outstanding contributions of immigrant refugees in South Africa, acknowledging their remarkable efforts. Additionally, it honored individuals who have triumphed over adversity in reaching the tapestry of their adopted homeland. Our South Africa correspondent Innocent Samosa was there and captured the spirit and stories of these inspiring individuals.
Archibald Immigrants Awards celebrate the diversity and resilience of those who have faced unimaginable challenges and against all odds have thrived.
The Archibald Immigrants Impact Awards stand as a testament to the power of unity in diversity. The remarkable contributions of immigrants and their invariable contribution in shaping our society.
The Zulu Indian dancers got everyone on their feet, moving to the rhythm. I had the privilege of speaking with some of the award recipients, and their stories are nothing short of inspiration, from entrepreneurs creating job opportunities to activists championing human rights.
Absolutely. It's such an honor to be this award, especially the first years of this award, and being part of the humanity activities that we've been doing for the last 3 years. We are very young organizations, but we actually impacted almost 100,000 people in South Africa.
It means actually deeper than what I just said, because it's as a Colombian that came some years ago to settle in a new place, it has not been easy as an immigrant, and I know that many people like me faces a lot of challenges in many topics.
It's just an encouragement, like they see. For me, it actually means that the people, like the world, is seeing what you are doing. It's just a word of encouragement for you to go forward and then to continue the journey that you have started like years ago.
Ambassador Andre Nzapayeke emphasized Nigeria's significant role in supporting South Africa in its struggle against apartheid.
I think I mentioned Nigeria as an example because I can tell you that many African countries really contributed heavily to the liberation of the entire Southern Africa. Many Africans for different countries sacrificed resources, money, and a lot of things to help liberate.
And this is what they love about the host nation.
I love everything about South Africa. I love the weather, the music, the food. I've been here for a very long time, so almost all my friends are South Africans. I think even though I'm a Ghanaian, this is home.
What an inspirational, motivational time it has been here. Indeed, this has been a celebration of unity, diversity, and culture. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samosa, Channels Television News.
It is beginning to feel like Christmas. U.S. First Lady Dr. Jill Biden unveiled this year's White House Christmas decorations with a theme of magic, wonder, and joy. This year's decorations celebrate the 200th anniversary of the holiday classic storybook, The Night Before Christmas, and features 98 Christmas trees, more than 140,000 lights, and other whimsical holiday scenes. It was an emotional moment for the First Lady as the 18-foot Christmas tree covered with gold stars and thousands of lights was dedicated to fallen service members.
It's this childlike marvel and awe that inspired this year's holiday theme, the magic, wonder, and joy of the season. Each room is designed to capture this pure, unfiltered delight and imagination, to see, this season, this time of year, through the wondrous, sparkling eyes of children. The first Christmas tree featured inside the White House is adorned with gold star ornaments, and they are engraved with the names of the fallen service members. This gold star tree honors the heroic, I know it's so emotional for those of you who did it. I know there were so many Gold Star families who helped with that tree. The heroic men and women of our nation's military, those who have laid down their lives for our country, and the families who carry on their legacies. May God bless our troops and their families.
Beautiful indeed. That's our program this evening. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker.